Okay, so variables as objects. Now, one other thing is I haven't seen other languages treating variables as objects. It may be the case that they do. I don't recall it. For example, I don't recall Java doing this, but Visual Basic .NET seems to do this. Okay, so as we said, we create a variable. It's a date type, and everything. We set it. We give it a value. But then we're going to treat it as an object. They say that actually, at this point, before you've written something like this down, it's not an object. It's just a variable. But as soon as you write this, and as soon as the compiler sees this, it creates more space and in memory for this and turns it into an object. Okay, so then it turns it into an object means that it gives you access to the date object's methods, because this is a date object, and so it's going to have date object methods, and one of the methods is add years. And the add years, pretty clear what it would do. It's going to add 3 years in this case to this date, so I guess it will become 2006 1/1. Okay, and you can do this as well. You can create another variable called new expiration and take this, which has 3 years added to it, and apply it to that. They also say, in addition to methods, date types expose properties. So we have also properties for date types. Besides like the add years method, we have properties such as the month and day properties. So you can take a date and say that, so you might say new expiration dot month, and that will return the month of that particular date. Now this really makes things a lot easier than some of the other ways you'd have to use to get the month. They say the keywords that follow the period after the dot, after the variable's name, are called methods and properties, just like the methods and properties of the controls you place on a form to create your application's visual interface. The methods and properties, those are called the members of the class or of the object. By the way, class means blueprint, and object means the actual instance of that blueprint, or instantiation of that blueprint. Okay, so anyway, the methods and properties, or members of the class of a variable, expose the functionality that's built into the class representing the variable itself. Expose means like you can get at, or just give you access to certain methods and properties. Without this built-in functionality, you'd have to write some serious code to extract the month and from a date variable. Okay, so it's much easier if you have that they did this, that they treated it as an object and gave you these properties of the date class or date objects. So they say, don't let this terminology scare you. Think of variables as placeholder for values and access their functionality with expressions shown earlier. In other words, start using variables to store values, just like we always do. But if you need to process them, enter a variable's name followed by a period. And then you'll see, right, using the IntelliSense will show you the list of the members it exposes. In most cases, you'll be able to figure out what these members do just by reading their names. I'll come back to the concept of variables as objects, but I wanted to hit it right off the bat. A more detailed discussion of the notion of variables as objects can be found in Chapter 8. Okay, a little explanation here. What are the implications of using of variables being basic data types, in other words, not objects, just data types, versus them being objects? Programming languages can treat simple variables much more efficiently than they treat objects. It just means they can handle them much more quickly and so the program can be much faster. An integer takes just 2 bytes of memory, and the compiler will generate very efficient code to manipulate an integer variable, add it to another numeric variable, compare it to another integer, and so on. So those are things you do with integers, like is a bigger than b, or add 2 integers. If you declare an integer variable and use it in your code as such, Visual Basic doesn't create an object to represent this value. It creates a new variable for storing integers, just like good old BASIC. BASIC was the original version of Visual Basic a long time ago. After you call one of a variable's methods, though, the compiler emits or sends out code to create an actual object. This process is called boxing. So boxing means the process of going from a variable just being a variable to it becoming an object. And that's something that Visual Basic.net does, and that process is called boxing. It introduces a small delay, but they say that delay is very insignificant compared to the convenience of manipulating a variable through its methods. So it may slow things down, but it's really convenient.